June 19, 2023, my name is Jaron Jackson. I do love America. For me, it is always about the gospel of Jesus Christ, his death, his burial, his resurrection. That is the only way to salvation. Believe in the shed blood of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins. The fact that he physically rose from the grave and you will be born again. You'll go to heaven with me and every other person who believes in that, because he is that good, it is that free, and it is awesome. Happy post-Father's Day and happy Juneteenth. I want to talk about Juneteenth today. I want to debunk the ravenous lie of Juneteenth, and I believe the political propagation that is pushing the codification of this holiday. Now, let me be very clear. Because I love Jesus, and because I want people to go to heaven and believe the gospel, I'm going to point out the fact that any and all slavery is wrong. And if you really want me to, we could go to Exodus chapter 20, and we can look at whenever it talks about, loving God. You should worship thy God and have no other gods before me. Well, if you worship God, and then if God makes people in his image, you should not hate people who are made in God's image because God made them. So to have any slavery, this is why Jesus is teaching on the Sermon on the Mount, to have hatred in your heart towards your brother is the same as though it's murder. Genesis chapter 1, God made man in his image, and then he gave man dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts of the land, and over every creeping, crawling thing on the earth. Which is why Adam should have nuked Satan in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, by the way, because he had dominion over the creeping, crawling things on the ground, and then the serpent came up and said, "Did God say?" The point that I'm trying to make is slavery is wrong because it's one image bearer of God having dominion over another image bearer of God. Period. Has nothing to do with skin shade. And I'm going to stop using skin color because skin color is not really accurate. Everyone has the same color of skin, but they have different shades of the same color. That's what I'm going to start saying. I'm going to stop saying that it's color arguments, and now it's a shade argument. So stop throwing shade my way. Really, though, let's get to the issue of what's going on. Juneteenth. Who ever heard of this? And now everyone's hearing about it. It's right in the middle of Pride Month, which I just think is delicious. I think it's so ironic and funny that you have the fornicating agenda, the sexual depravity agenda, and then right in the middle of it, June 19th, you have the fact that, everybody's racist except for the people that are supporting the radical left, the destruction of the country. Folks, there is an aggressive, godless, deceptive, into the eyes, into the ears, for the domination, key terrain of the mind, for the prize of your soul, push. We spoke last week about how discerning narratives seems to be the most significant, substantive way that ideas in the world is shaped right now. Probably forever. It just didn't be the fact that America was subjected to so many lies, but now we are. There's so many things out there that if you're not using your Bible, if you're not following Jesus, how do you really know it's true? Jesus said in John 17:17, "Sanctify them by thy truth, thy word is truth." The Bible says, "Let God be true and every man a liar," Romans 3 verse 4. So we read the Bible to figure out what's true, but today I want to talk about Juneteenth being debunked, how this racial narrative, this every black person a slave narrative, this every white man is a descendant of a white devil's slave plantation owner narrative is bad. How it's divisive and there's never a solution for it. You recognize the cultural Marxists, coming from people who hate Jesus, Karl Marx, he's in hell because he didn't believe the gospel. You should believe the gospel so you don't join Karl Marx in hell. These cultural Marxists are pushing this dangerous ideology because it divides people. As soon as black people and white people, as soon as these different shades start to integrate and start to say, you know what, we're all getting screwed with COVID. We're all getting screwed with the government tyranny. We're all getting screwed with the cheap machines. I don't care which political party you vote for. If you're all getting screwed over, if the oppression is against everybody, once people start to kind of get on the same page going, wait, well, you're a different skin shade than me, but that's not really what, I don't really have that again. I don't care. But now I'm told that I have to hate you? And it's not because these other people, the theys, behind the power, are propagating these messages. See, these are tools of division. And because they're tools of division, they need to be destroyed. These are idols. These are what other people have crafted. And these idols, when people look at them, are ensconced. They are propagandized. They are actuated for anger. And so you look at Juneteenth. The disparaging, dividing line here is the shade of your skin. That's it. Because if slavery is wrong because it's one image bearer of God enslaving another or having dominion over another, that's wrong because it's against God. It's first against God and then it's against other people. So any and all form of slavery is bad. Sex slavery is bad. All sorts of other things are wrong. It's sin. It is sin. This is why the gospel matters so much. But the people pushing the Juneteenth narrative, they have to anchor to the people with the psychology that are sensitive. Whether it's actually people that are descendant from slaves, or it's people who think that they're coming from Africa, that they've never been to Africa and they have no tie to Africa. We have a bad history. And if you actually look at this, most of the history on Juneteenth is going to start with the actual day that it was, began. And it began in a General Order number 3 from Texas, right? It says here, this is the Galveston, Texas, June 19, 1965. So this is after the Civil War has been concluded. It says, the people are informed that, so notice it talks about the people. The people that are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation of the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves the absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in incidences, either there or elsewhere. Major General Granger. This is the predicate of Juneteenth. It's this proclamation that was made by the military general in Texas after the Civil War. Hey, all slaves are freed. All freedmen are not slaves. Now, I understand that sin exists, and I understand that people that founded this nation weren't perfect. But this General Order number 3 speaks of the fact that they have the absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property. I would argue that that was always the case. I would also argue that not every single black person or black color shade of skin was a slave. See, think about this. Let's just reduce it to black people and white people, though I hate doing that, but because people have been programmed to be stupid, we have to think about it in terms where people are going to be able to think differently than what they've been deceived. So people with fair skin, white skin, people that look like me, vastly outnumbered people who don't look like me before the Civil War. And if you think that the Civil War was fought because of slavery, you have a ahistorical, propagandized view of the Civil War. The Civil War was fought because the North was trying to impose upon the South that its main industry, agriculture, had to be regulated, couldn't be imported, could be taxed, and all these other things. And as a result of that, this slavery narrative is the issue that has now been promulgated, such that whenever people hear about slavery, when they hear about the Civil War, that's what they think, slavery. But I want to step back and I want to say that this Juneteenth thing, we'll get to the history, but this Juneteenth thing is really an effort to get into the psyche of the American people, specifically the American dark skin shaded person. The dark skin shaded person is supposed to now be trained that there was a time that before that time you were all absolutely everybody was a slave. This country is so racist. Everybody who looked like you was a slave. Absolutely everybody. Do not deny it. Don't question it. Don't ask what the condition of the slavery was. Don't ask the condition of their worker. Don't ask any questions. Just believe everybody was in the field with a sickle going, days never finished, master got me. Everybody was like that. Everybody. Everybody was getting whipped. Everybody was getting raped. Everybody, absolutely everywhere, was in this despotic position. Now, for the record, all of that is wrong. All of that is sin. I don't like sin. I want Jesus. So my main message is to the gospel. But understand the force of elevating this notion that everybody absolutely that looked like they had dark skin, their skin shade was dark. The idea of elevating that everybody was a slave is now an idol that whenever you look at it, the response is anger. The response is hate. You raise up the symbol and hate. They raise up the symbol and pounce. They raise up the symbol and divide. So now Juneteenth is trying to be jammed in the conscience, in the psyche of the modern American. And because I believe that people pushing this think that they've successfully trained Americans to hear Civil War and think slavery, Civil War, slavery, Civil War, slavery. Because I believe that people pushing Juneteenth think that, I don't think that's true, by the way, but because they think that, they now go Juneteenth, Juneteenth, Juneteenth. And now everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people are saying, Happy Second Independence Day. Happy Second Independence Day. My question is, if you had independence back in 1865, do you need independence now? Do you need a third Independence Day? By what standard are we judging that people are free again? I think that this is a rabbit hole. I think it's one that will never achieve solution or redemption because it's predicated on the physical difference of people. And so instead of God getting the glory because he's a creator and he can give distinctiveness, because there are distinctives. There are absolutely genetic distinctives because, obvious is your skin color looks different. But there are genetic distinctives amongst the people. And I think that that is a way to give God the glory, to recognize that his people are different. He's creative. And because he's creative, we need to give him the glory and we need to give each other grace. We need to give grace whenever we look at people who don't look like us, who aren't behaving the way we don't want them to, and say, is that according to the Bible or is that just according to who they are? Is that according to their culture? Is it a sin for them to like a certain sport and a certain fruit? Is it a sin for them to do XYZ? People need to give grace. Now, this message won't ring well in the modern ear of the political left. The political left are going to hate this idea, brand it as racist, and they'll do it because ultimately they hate Jesus. And what I'm trying to do is use a biblical approach to skewer this idol that they've all elevated, that now you have to bend the knee to worship. And if you don't worship the idea or the idol of Juneteenth, then you're racist. It has no truth behind it, but that's the subtext. If you don't do what we want you to do when we shove in front of your face a symbol that's supposed to say, if you're white, you're a racist. If you're black, you are oppressed. If you don't respond, if you don't bend the knee when that idol is shown, then you're a hateful racist. And so I believe that this is what I will liken to fetch. Fetch is a term. Let's go back to the 2004 movie Mean Girls. I'll play this clip. Commentary follows.
Oh my god, I love your bracelet. Where did you get it? Oh, my mom made it for me. It's adorable. So fetch. What is fetch?
Oh, it's like slang from England.
So if you're from Africa, why are you white?
Hello. Hello, may I please speak to Taylor Waddell?
She's not home yet. Who's calling?
Oh, this is Susan from Planned Parenthood. I have her test results. If you could have her give me a call as soon as she can. It's urgent. Thank you. She's not going out with anyone. Okay, that was so fetch.
You love him, and he totally complimented you. That is so fetch.
Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
It's the same energy. Juneteenth is the same energy as fetch. Someone figured out, someone's looking around going, hey, all these dark skin shaded people, they don't really have it as bad anymore. They ain't in the fields. They ain't, doing the slave. There's no underground rail. None of that's going on. In fact, you could make the argument that Democrats got them on plantations, also called cities. So now there's this recognition that, well, things aren't that bad. We got to remind the folk of something that they should be angry about. So now they're trying to make Juneteenth happen. Juneteenth is trying to be fetched. It's trying to be caught on. And so, because if you say it enough, people will believe it, I think that it's going to catch on. So here in a little bit, what I never ever heard before is Juneteenth. I've never even ever heard anybody talk about Juneteenth. It's now Juneteenth. Their problem. Their problem is that they're in the middle of the fornication month. They're going to have to share with the Sodom. And they don't share. They take or they give. Here is Asa Hutchinson. He's running for president as a Republican, and now he's saying, today we celebrate Juneteenth and the freedom that was wrongly taken. It took a courageous president and a civil war to change. Again, he has an ahistorical view of what the Civil War was. He's also recognizing that the president, during wartime, writing a proclamation doesn't secure your rights. Your rights are secured by the Constitution. The Founding Fathers knew this, which is why many of them that signed the Declaration and many of them that signed the Constitution were abolitionists. The second president of the United States was a massive abolitionist. His son, also with the same name, was also a massive abolitionist. So, you have to understand that the Christian theme of redemption, of reconciliation, of restitution has always been here. It's just that because sin is prevalent, sin happens. But I want to go back to this idea, because then you go, what's his name? Greg Abbott of Texas also gets in on it. So here's another Republican. Juneteenth marks the arrival of the Emancipation Proclamation to Texas and the end of slavery in the United States. Texas was the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday. Today and every day, we strive towards a more perfect union with liberty and opportunity for all. First of all, I'll say that the more perfect union, which was in the preamble of the Constitution, is speaking to the fact that the collective power of the U.S. federal government was centralizing the effort to perform the very limited functions in Article 1, Section 8 that are enumerated. And so the more perfect union isn't speaking about a better moral outcome. It's speaking about a more restrictive government. In fact, if you want more information, you can take the time to study and get a free common law seminar. A free common law seminar at livelocal.store/common law. It's 12 hours of content. I give you a free Black's Law Dictionary. I give you free over 1,600 maxims of law. I give you free books. I give you free everything. If you say, Jaron, I don't understand and this doesn't make sense, I'm literally giving you free information, free knowledge that took me a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of prayer to study and get. That knowledge should be given to everybody, which is why I'm giving it to you for free. So if you don't like the way that things are going, understand you can learn the common law for free at livelocal.store/common law. But you need to understand that this making Juneteenth Fetch, why the holiday? The holiday, I believe, is needed to continue to install hate mechanisms in our culture. You need hate mechanisms throughout the year to keep people riled up, to keep people mad. Now, what if you've got a black neighbor and then a black neighbor standing right next to a white neighbor, a darker shaded guy next to a lighter shaded guy, and they're neighbors, and then all of a sudden Juneteenth rolls around, and because Juneteenth rolls around, they're neighbors, physically neighbors, same neighborhood, kids go to the same school. Same trash service, same internet service, same utilities, same roads, same everything. Let's say that the darker shade skin guy comes out and says, Juneteenth. Or no, let's just flip it. And let's say the white guy comes out and says, Juneteenth, black power. And the darker shaded guy's like, what are you talking about, man? We're neighbors. I'm going to go to my job. I'm going to drive on the streets. I'm going to get the same trash service. I've got the same cell phone service. I've got all this stuff. What are you talking about? By the way, 1865 happened a long time ago. These are hate mechanisms needing to be installed into our culture to keep it going. The frustrating part that has to be for these godless commies is that Juneteenth, the history, happens to be on the month that everyone's celebrating fornication. Happens to be the month that everyone's celebrating sodomy. So that which is where it's so unfortunate for them. It's so unfortunate that they would have something that they could use for their purpose, but then it would be screwed over by people that are unnatural. But listen, I believe that this comes down to the fact that people have had their knowledge stripped away from them. Truth has been hidden in such a way that people have been trained to hate each other for stupid, superficial, unjustified, ahistorical circumstances. Which is unfortunate, because our country is so much better than that. But people, because that's how they've been trained, that's how they will think. Let's go to sharecropping. Now, I want to investigate sharecropping, because if you type in sharecropping and you go to Wikipedia, you go to any historical article, sharecropping will almost exclusively start post-Civil War, as though the end of the Civil War happened and then all of a sudden sharecropping existed. And so my mind, I'm sitting here going, if there were a lot more white people in the South, like legions more, like just massive amount more white people than there were black people, how are all the black people generating all the labor? I mean, because that's really what our simplistic education models is supposed to be teaching, right? That every white slave or every white person in the South was a slave owner. They just had big plantations full of slaves and they're just whipping them all over. In fact, just like that is the model that godless commies and modern leftists, cultural Marxists would want you to believe. That everybody in the South, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, all of these southern states, the thinking is they all own slaves. So it's like one white person and then like 500 black people with a bunch of slave drivers. It's not true. Just numerically, it's not true. There's a lot more white people than there were black people. What were the white people doing for a living? What were the majority of white people in the South doing before the Civil War? Before the Civil War. Because if you look up sharecropping, it's going to start with after the Civil War. And then that's where you start to get into Jim Crow laws. That's whenever you start to get into this Reconstruction. That's whenever you still get the lingering hate towards dark-shaded people. And so the narrative continues that everyone's just hateful. Well, if you look into sharecropping, you'll recognize that it was going on well before the Civil War. In fact, most sharecropping in Mississippi, you got to go to the Wayback Machine to get this one, by the way. Most sharecropping in Mississippi before the Civil War wasn't done by slaves. It was done by white people. It was done by poor white people. Sharecropping is not slavery. It's not a good economic condition, but it certainly is a financial arrangement whereby the people who live on the land and are doing the crops, the croppers, get to eat what they produce. But what they produce is given to the people who own the land. So you had landowners, and then you had the people that lived on the land. And the people who lived on the land produced from the land. And from the production of the land, the people who produced got to eat. And the people who owned the land got some of the profit. This is sharecropping. This is an economic and financial arrangement that most people had to do. And so if you ask most black people today, or if you're a black person, or if you're a dark-shaded person, go to your ancestors and say, where did y'all come from? Did y'all come off the boats? Or were y'all sharecroppers? Because if you're sharecroppers, you weren't slaves. You're just poor. And if you're just poor, you're like most of the white people before the Civil War. Like 98% of white people before the Civil War, dirt poor. Dirt poor. So dirt poor that they only had what the earth produced. Sharecropping is a massive, it's a mass misnomer. It's something that the American people have been taught just kind of poofed into existence after slavery, because before slavery, all the white people that outnumbered all the black people by, eons, were just kind of chilling on the porches, drinking iced tea, sipping on lemonade, cracking whips while all the black people worked all the lands. Now, I absolutely believe that chattel slavery existed. It was vicious. I absolutely believe that there were people that were taken and sold from Africa by other Africans to people. But you have to think, if that's happening, in the early 19th century, where's all those boats? And how do you get those boats to go across the currents, where all the currents are going from the west to the east? How do you get them to go across the currents for weeks on end with all that food? Where's the food supply? Where's the water supply? There's a lot of logistical things that I don't know, but I have lots of questions on. So if your family doesn't come from Africa, where'd it come from? Where do your ties come from? And this is why if you keep going back, you probably have ties to sharecroppers. And if you're in sharecropping, you're just poor. You're not a slave, you're poor. There's people today that are functionally in the same position. You go to a cubicle in an office. You sit at another man's computer. You take your fingers and you click on his computer. And you do this for time. And you may produce thought products. You may be accounting for his numbers to make things are straight. You may be taking his call. You may be doing whatever. But you are functionally a sharecropper. Because if you doing an office job produces a benefit for the person who owns the office, then the person who owns the office doesn't get the benefit unless the employees are doing their clickety-clacking or their work at the office. So if you go to the office to do work, whoever benefits from you, whoever owns the office, is the landowner, and you are the sharecropper. Because if you don't produce from that office, your family doesn't eat. So if you think about it from that perspective, you can see that if you're going to say today, Juneteenth was the second Independence Day, then you have to recognize that from a substantive perspective, there are more sharecroppers today than there were back then. You have to. If you're going to be intellectually honest, if you're going to keep the same philosophy. Now, the only argument that I could see crosswise is, well, that was outside in the heat. That was outside before the air conditioning. And you have to understand that it's a very privileged argument that you just made. You just made the argument based on electricity, based on HVAC. You just made the argument based on modern amenities. And so the arrogance of making a modern amenity-infused argument and criticism about history renders your perspective completely biased, and that should show the agenda behind the Juneteenth movement. If you're in an office working for the man and you get a paycheck and the IRS takes 40% of it before you ever get anything, if you work in the office for the man, if the office doesn't exist, if the field doesn't exist, then do you actually make money? And if you don't make money, does the office guy make money? Is that slavery? Maybe. You might think that. You might start to kind of realize that. You might think that you're exchanging so much of your time to someone else's benefit that by the time that you get home to your family, you don't actually want to be with your family, or you don't have energy to be a dad, you don't have whatever. This is the plight of man. That we live in a sinful world. When sin happened, God said he cursed the ground. That ground is not just the ground. That ground is also the fact that now you got to be working to produce. You have to produce. Now, in his grace, in his glory, he gives us the opportunities, the time, the talents, the ingenuity to think about stuff. But if you today are going to take the Juneteenth narrative that everybody's a racist, that all black people were slaves, and all white people need to bend the knee and shut up because they're all coming from racist slave owners, if you think like that, then you have to say that the slavery exists today. And if you say that the slavery exists today, why are you so focused on Juneteenth and not right now? Why don't you take care of the tyranny and the oppression right now? I believe that the Juneteenth holiday is to take their ideas off of the current tyranny, off of the current oppression, off of the current bad model of corporate globalism and tyranny going over other people, taking it off of admiralty law and off of corporatism, taking it off of common law, and focusing on way back then. And so there will be people today who are in the cubicles working on the plantations of their owners right now who will be so geared up about Juneteenth 100 and however many years ago. When that starts to make sense, you understand that sharecropping way back in the day is nothing more than what you're doing right now. I mean, if you work for somebody, you're a sharecropper. If you work for somebody, you're sharecropping. And this is the type of intellectual honesty people don't have, because they're not able to understand their own bias and their own presupposition. They're not able to understand and to see the frame that they're using to approach the world. That's why I started with the Bible. You start with the scriptures, you're understanding, okay, nothing's perfect. We're not guaranteed good things. We get good things because he's good. God's good. But we're guaranteed tribulation because this world is not our home. That doesn't mean we don't treat it like we're supposed to, participate in the kingdom and walk with Jesus. But certainly when we look at feeding our families, providing for our families, there's going to be cursed earth there. There's going to be clickety-clacking in office buildings. There's going to be doing stuff with your hands to pass the time, to produce, to make things. And that's good and that's God-honoring. So instead of looking at your job as, well, now I'm a sharecropper, look at your job as, this is the opportunity I get to be the patriarch to start a nation of my children, of my generations, of my descendants, and I'm going to work hard today so they have it good tomorrow. And you might just start getting into the psychology of the people that were sharecropping before the Civil War. You might even get into the psychology of the people that were sharecropping after the Civil War. I'm going to suffer today to benefit my children tomorrow. That is a selfless perspective, and I believe it is only the selfish perspective of today, the one that's cultural Marxist. Remember, Marx hated Jesus. He's in hell because he didn't believe the gospel. Believe the gospel, don't go to hell. Marx pushed this, haves, have-nots. And then the godless commies from France, you got a bunch of these atheist Jewish people from France, the Frankfurt School, come over to America, look at the culture and say, we hate America. Let's introduce cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism has certainly taken the root because parents don't fear God, their marriages are destroyed, pornography's all over the place, and we ship our kids to public indoctrination schools. And so when Caesar educates our kids, we should not lament the fact that they come back Roman. So all of this stuff is going on, and now you've got things like Juneteenth and Pride Month and Black History Month and Elevate Black Voices and Celebrate Pride and all this other kind of crap going on. And it's like, how do you stop it? You don't stop it. You overcome it. I'm not looking to stop the left. I'm not looking to stop the radical left destroying America. I'm looking to be not overcome by evil, but overcoming evil with good. Amen. Now, Speaker's Corner is a famous place in London. Now, London doesn't really have free speech because it's the knife-wielding capital of the world, but Speaker's Corner has long been known as a free speech haven. You can say whatever you want, just can't incite to rile up a mob. Because of immigration policies, the demographics in United Kingdom have changed. London, Speaker's Corner specifically, is no longer a safe haven of free speech. It is now a roving savannah where packs of Muslims hear Christian message and they attack. Don't believe me? Watch this. Commentary follows. Where's my... Oh, I didn't load it. So here it is. Watch this. Commentary follows.
Whoa, 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 cowards! Whoa, 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 come, calm down! You're just a mob when you lose the debate. That's all you are. Violence again.
Now, the issue really came over the different versions of Quran of the Quran. There's multiple Christian YouTubers that go to Speaker's Corner and speak the gospel of Jesus Christ. There are Muslims that go to Speaker's Corner and speak about Allah because there's no good news in Islam. So people do their own thing. Amen. Free speech. Notice that that's a Christian virtue. From the wellspring of the heart, the mouth speaks. So you can say what you want, right? You can say what you want. There's consequences. Because demographics have changed through mass migration into the United Kingdom, you now have a greater and a larger Muslim population, which means you have more people believing Islam. Islam is not going to tolerate any type of criticism against Muhammad or the Quran. Islam falsely believes that there are not multiple versions of the Quran. They believe that there's one version of the Quran. And so there are YouTubers, Christian YouTubers in Speaker's Corner, who frequently bring out the multiple different types of Qurans and they show them. And as an ironic twist, the Muslims that are so adamant about the fact that they have a Quran that's perfectly preserved, have they themselves been taught that by their clerics and by their mullahs and sheikhs instead of actually reading the documents themselves. And so because, like a lot of Christians, by the way, who don't read the Bible, if they're not reading the Quran and they don't know, they hear the fact that there's different they hear the fact that there's different Qurans and they flip. They flip because they can't handle that. They can't understand why there would be different versions, different they can't handle it. And so they attack. These Christian YouTubers have been stabbed. They've had their stuff burned. They've had their material crushed. Now, it's not good that Muslims are doing that to Christians. It wouldn't be good if Christians or someone claiming to be a Christian would be doing that to other people. My point is that a staple of Western civilization, because Western civilization has been historically Christian, has been and is free speech. Free speech is being attacked because Christendom seems to be not advancing. It seems to be that people who love Jesus, understand the Bible is true, aren't living as though that's the case, and certainly not speaking it. Which means, in God's wisdom, there's going to be an increase in intensity. There's going to be an increase in violence. Not because we deserve it, but because when love and truth isn't proclaimed, where it's believed, evil's going to attack, and evil's going to come in. And so this is an example of bad immigration policy, bringing in people who aren't from there, who aren't assimilating, and because they haven't assimilated and they bring in a foreign and demonic religion, now that foreign and demonic religion is going head up to against the truth. This is happening also in Ireland, where the Irish people are almost going to be jailed for critics of new gender identities laws. This is the idea, and this is why I brought up Speaker's Corner. Speaker's Corner has been the bastion of free speech in the UK, and now the UK has Irish speech laws against people criticizing or going against gender stuff. This is where common law is understood. This is where common law is useful. If you want to study, go ahead and get your free seminar at livelocal.store/common law. I won't try to sell you on it, but if you want to understand it, there you are. This is where we have to understand what's really going on in the world. This is why we preach the gospel. This is why we have the Bible. This is why we don't quit. This is why we overcome evil with good. Just an update on our European friends. All right, I want to talk about the Halderman Report. This report right here is from the Halderman. The Halderman Report doc that comes out talks about the fact that the demonstration of the malware in Georgia's machines, the Dominion voting machines, look at the underlined portion. Demonstration malware simply tracks how many ballots have been printed since the machine was turned on and skips cheating on the first in ballots, number of ballots for an attacker configuration number. The next portion says, attackers could simply increase the number of ballots the malware skipped accordingly. This is talking about the fact that there is absolutely no practical method of pre-election or parallel testing can rule out malware-based fraud. Now, this is where I want to really specify things, because the election integrity movement is trying to prove fraud. Fraud is a crime because it speaks to mens rea, a guilty conscience. If you have a guilty conscience, then you have an intent. And intent is what you need to prove in order to show fraud. If you commit fraud but can't prove the intent, then you can't prove fraud because it's a crime. If, however, you do fraud and you just say that's bad governance, that's wrong administration, maladministration, if you say that, then now that's a lower bar. In the United States, we have a common law government. I want to show for you, if I can, this book right here. It's the Two Treaties of Government by John Locke. Two Treaties of Government by John Locke. I first want to say, this is page, what's it called? This is page 86. And page 86 starts out, 'Tis true, the civil lawyers have pretended to determine some of these cases concerning the succession of princes. These are magistrates. These are people with power in government. But by our author's principles, they have meddled in a matter that belongs not to them. Right? So the political power belongs to people, and John Locke is saying that frequently lawyers get involved in matters that don't concern them. Here we have on page 193 of John Locke's Two Treatises of Government, section 153. And we go to section 153. Come on, camera. It's not working. This says, come on. All right, well, it says, when the legislative, there we go. When the legislative have put the execution of laws they make into other hands, they have power still to resume it out of those hands. So if the legislature writes powers and they give it to the executive branch, the legislature still has the power to take it out of those hands when they find cause. So this would be investigation, this would be subpoenas, this would be reports and committees, and to punish for any maladministration against the laws. A maladministration is just wrong administration. So whenever there is wrong administration of the laws, the legislature, according to investigations, have the power to resume it out of those hands. This is what the common law is. This is explaining the powers of our government in order to function. But people don't learn this. People aren't taught this, which is why, again, I will say, if you want a free common law seminar, to go to the link below. The reason why I understand and I want to push this so hard is that we have people today that will say this. They'll say to the GOP, look, exclusive documents found proving the FBI is a secret police force for Democrats. And people will be like, we know, can you please do something about it? And the GOP will write, we'll write in another strongly worded letter. Folks, your politics have failed you. Conservative politicians, conservative pundits are failing us. They're undermining America. They're not actually doing anything. You can find in the Halderman Report corruption in elections. The election integrity movement, God bless him, has been a great thing to move the perception of the people, the belief of the people, to where a majority of the people now believe that the 2020 election, and probably 2022 elections, were corrupt. But if you're trying to prove corruption, if you're trying to prove fraud, you're going at it as a crime. We are a republic. We have the administration of the government open to the people. And so whenever the people see bad government, that's maladministration. That's not fraud. Stop going for the fraud. Go for maladministration. Again, we talk about that in the Common Law Seminar. The link is in the description below. But I just want to speak one more thing. This is Secretary Raffensperger, that I believe that he is speaking along the lines of, he's making a metacognitive point. Big word. Let me explain that after the video.
Well, maybe it's time that he and I get together. What I would say is, why don't we all, he and I, go out to the Reagan Library, we'll have a debate. I'll bring a copy of my letter to Congress, and I'll bring a copy of my book, Integrity Counts. And maybe perhaps he could bring the reports that he paid for by Simpatico and the Berkeley Research Group, and showing what the election results. And we'll debate the issues point by point. Because at the end of the day, I have facts on my side, and he doesn't.
Yeah, the idea is that the metacognitive point that I think is going on, Raffensperger has a book, which means he wants to sell it, which means he wants to make money. And I'm not against people selling books to make money. In fact, you got my Live Local Field Manual, my Christian Nationalism is Inevitable book, both links in the description. Amen. So I'm not against people making a living. I am, however, if you are a public servant like Raffensperger is, he's the Georgia Secretary of State. He's the guy in charge of running elections in Georgia. We're going to get him, by the way. But this guy is saying, well, I'm going to debate President Trump using my book, Integrity Matters. Here's the fault. Statutory permissions through legislatures define what is legal, not lawful. And so if the government can contract with third parties like it has with Dominion, well, then that contract should be purview of the people because it's in contract with the government. But people aren't doing that. What people are doing is they're saying that they committed fraud. Well, that's a completely different conversation than what is actually about the government. Meanwhile, the people that the godless commies like Raffensperger, who's a useful idiot or perhaps a knowing idiot for running the corruption scheme in Georgia, like with what their governor is. That dude's in, I believe that guy's in on it too. These guys, meanwhile, are selling books and they're growing their celebrity for being the guys that are never Trump. And so is there financial market to be against Trump? Sure there is, because millions of people hate him. And if millions of people hate him, wouldn't you want the book that showed that he stopped Trump? Yeah, I'll buy that. They won't read it, but they'll buy it. Why will they buy it? Because they will want the prize on their bookshelf to say, I've got the book that shows that the guy who hates Trump was able to stop Trump, so screw him. Meanwhile, the guy that wrote the book is getting all the money from all the hate. So you recognize, again, just like the Juneteenth, there is a hatred that's being done on a person or on something instead of the actual issue. And so unless you recognize that these people are just making money bank, hand over fist, I want to debate President Trump. Really? Can you see President Trump? Secretary Raffensperger, Section 13 of the Georgia State, blah, blah, blah. It's just dumb. This is dumb. This is the stupidest thing ever. It's gay, which is good because it's happening during Pride Month. Speaking of Pride Month, Pride comes before the fall. Americans don't want to be gay anymore. This is coming from the Gallup, which is saying that America's views on the morality of same-sex positions. Look at those down terms. Look at that, going up, and boom, steadily down. All of them steadily down. The trend line is still up, but look at that. Republicans down to 41%. Even the godless commie Democrats are down. Now, why would this be the case? Why would this be the case? One, sexual depravity is evil, and I think that whenever it is unvarnished, people are like, ugh, I don't actually want demons diddling kids. I don't actually want this stuff going on. But this is what they rigged, so this is what they ride. I want to show that this is some of the stupidity and the depravity. We're going to build this up. Like, why would Americans not want to be gay anymore? Exhibit number A.
Restaurant is opening in Toronto where all the food is made by chefs who have HIV. On June 14th, June's HIV Plus Eatery will host an evening of cocktails and a multi-course dinner prepared by people living with HIV. And in honor of Pride Month, all proceeds will go to Casey House, which is a hospital and center for people with HIV.
You guys want to go eat gay food? you want to go eat AIDS food? Oh man, I'm not saying that you're gonna get AIDS if you eat the food. I'm not that stupid, but it's like what if you're chopping and you get some blood and it's why would you celebrate the fact that all the food is made by people that have HIV? Where'd they get the HIV? Anyway. This is a Biden administrator. This is a Biden official speaking about monkeypox, which they now call Mpox. They no longer call it monkeypox. They call it Mpox. Here's that guy. Listen to what he says. Then we're going to figure out who he is. So watch this.
I work in HIV normally, and I'll tell you that, I always say that I've never made an HIV diagnosis in someone that hasn't somehow related to stigma. I think Mpox is the same. So really, stigma tends to be a barrier to testing, a barrier to vaccination. And so, really addressing stigma intentionally and making sure that we get the word out in a way that supports people's joy as opposed to, calling them risky. So I think, one of the things to think about is that, one person's idea of risk is another person's idea of a great festival or Friday night, for that matter. So we have to sort of embrace that with joy and make sure that folks know how to keep themselves safe.
Gotta embrace it with joy. Embrace it with joy. There's so much stuff going on. We'll get to who he is and what his bona fides are, what his honorifics are here in a second. He's saying we have to embrace with joy people who have HIV, who might have a stigma against vaccinating to HIV, especially whenever they go get monkeypox. A lot built in. I don't know if monkeypox is spread by sodomy. Certainly there are people who have said that that's the case. At the same time, if people don't want to get a monkeypox vaccination because they're homosexual and they've got HIV and they do it because all this stuff's going on, the stigma is coming from HIV people. But we just saw a restaurant where the HIV people are making all the food. So there's this embracing of this, but it is that kind of characterization, embracing with joy. What someone might call a risk is what another person might just say, having fun on a Friday night. That is using common man speech with a Christian culture to disarm gay orgy, to disarm sodomy. You're going to not use specific terms to really speak to what you're saying. You're going to use euphemism. You're going to use ambiguity to shroud your sin. Now I say that because that dude right there is this guy. That's this guy. Dr. Dimitri, right? Like this is this guy. There you go, the pentagram shirt. That guy doesn't love Jesus. He's also this guy right here. This is the guy. This is the guy. Got like all that pentagram stuff on his things. Look at that. He's wearing like a choke collar. That's him. That's that guy. That's the guy who works for the Biden administration. He's in the health department, health things, and he's the guy that's going against monkeypox. So I guess you have to give Biden administration some kudos for putting a sodomite in with the health administration regarding HIV and people that have stigmas from HIV and homosexual diseases. But it's like... It's in the face. It's in the face of people. What I think is just so ironic is that they still, there's still a modicum of not just show. I mean, like, why didn't the guy show up in all his BDSM gear? Why didn't they just do the interview like that? That should tell you that they're still not quite there. They're about to be, but they're still not quite there. I want to play for you this Dodgers clip. This was the LA Dodgers Stadium. Speaking of just out there in the public, Los Angeles Dodgers wanted to celebrate the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which should talk to you about the Epicurean lifestyle, which is just sex depraved. It's evil. It's demonic. It certainly isn't of Jesus. But notice, not what they say, notice how many people are in the stands. Commentary follows.
The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence for their outstanding service to the LGBTQ+ community.
Hold on, commentary follows.
The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence for their outstanding service to the LGBTQ+ community. Sister Unity and Sister Dominia. Our next guest is the only openly gay Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's just... I hate all of this. I hate sin. I really hate disgusting stuff being shoved in my face, which is why I'm not going to go to an LA Dodgers game anymore, but that's Los Angeles. That's heart of the godless commies. That's Hollywood. That's, that's the heart of it. The stadium was empty, celebrating the Sister of Perpetual Indulgence, the sexual gratification people. Don't lose hope. Your hope should be in Christ, but what I've just tried to present to you, the Gallup polls, the folks that are still like out there and openly satanic are still trying to like hide themselves with normal speech and ambiguous language, so as to not completely shine people away, show people away. And then the LA Dodgers, Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium is completely empty, boycotted by a bunch of Catholics outside, while they're celebrating a bunch of degenerates inside. It shouldn't be lost on you. Shouldn't be lost on you. We are so far away from being absolutely devastated. Don't let what comes in through your eyes or in through your ears rattle around in the key terrain of your mind to get you to believe that there's a movie where everyone is, on board with this crap. Because it's not true. I want to cover a died suddenly and corruption in our healthcare. This guy's name is Big Pokey. I should say was, because he's dead. These are the last few moments of his life. If you've got a child or you don't want to see someone fall over because they died, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
One time. Hold me something, man. Hey, DJ. Come on, man. Give me some pet or something, man. Stop playing with the Big Pokey. Fast stop, man. Hey, Big Polio, the fast stop, man. Oh, my goodness,
Yeah, several comments. One, you never know when you're going to go. A lot of people make it, and we'll talk about the died suddenly because I think that this is from the shot, but I can't prove it, but that's what I think. You know, I live in the world of multiple millions of people got multiple shots of stuff they have no idea, but was pushed by your government after locking the world down. So yes, I think I'm well grounded in order to believe a conspiracy. At the same time, you never know when you're going to go, so you need to know the gospel. You need to know Jesus, because that dude went. Secondly, everyone else just kind of looked over him. So there's no pride whenever you die. That is, your pride is dismissed. Your body is a shell. It falls over. You pass. There's like, you're not going to be able to keep your respect through that because it's not going to look good. It's going to be horrible. At the same time, you notice all the cameras that start popping up to take footage of it. Oh, I got to remember this. I got to see what's going on, which is just a reflection of our culture, but it's also a deference to death. People try to capture it and see it. They're so mesmerized by it because it is so powerful. It's ultimate. People know that death is final unless you're in Jesus. And the last idea is that the party just went on. The party just went on. They just kept playing music. People are like, oh, well, what's going on? And they started playing hip to the hop, a dippy dippy dop. Like they just started playing things to keep the party going because they wanted to distract from death. And there's a lesson there. Oh, there's death going on? Here, play the music. Get the hot girls. Do the economic news. Do the things to get people distracted. Juneteenth. Get Juneteenth out. Get Pride Month out. Anybody to distract people from sin. Anything to distract them from the truth of what's going on in this world. Shame. I want to speak briefly about the usefulness of education. There's a video. There's a bad word at the end. I'm going to try to clip it. But I think this video, there's a lot of truth to it. So commentary follows.
Out of everything that you learned from kindergarten through senior year, do you remember any of the random things that you learned that do not actually have to do with your daily life, or things that you didn't do hands-on, or things that you weren't super interested in when you were learning it? Can you recall anything? Because I cannot, and a lot of people apparently cannot. So why are we sitting there for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, learning it and memorizing facts that we don't actually need to know? I would say probably 70% of what we learn we don't need to know. But we need to know a lot of other things that we are not taught. If I had to guess, I would say that that's the master plan of dumbing down the population en masse within a few generations. Most people are no longer self-sufficient. We don't know how to grow food. We don't even know the life cycle of food. We don't know how to raise animals. We don't know how to sew clothes. We don't know how to do first aid. We don't know how to do anything important. But thank God I know how to do long division, even though I have a calculator.
Yeah, she was about to drop it. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. I also think she's a homeschool mom because you were seeing that she was making the video with a kid in the background. I'm a fan of homeschooling. If you can't homeschool, we'll try to figure out how you can get your kids out of the public education system, because even if you are under the predicate now that my school's good, the teachers here are good, you're still trusting your child with another person. And if that person doesn't have a biblical worldview, that person is going to be infusing and influencing a young, impressionable brain with a non-biblical worldview over a long time for other things. I also like the idea of the usefulness in education. That's really the issue that I saw, was not about the homeschool stuff, even though I'm biased and you know that, but it's about the usefulness of education. You should always be learning, always be testing. Are you doing what's right? My world has been turned upside down over the last couple of years. I'm sure yours has as well. This is a time for learning. This is a time for figuring things out. Learning, listening, asking, watching, trying, experimenting. This is that time. I believe in an optimistic gospel. I do not believe that there will be a despotic one world government that takes over everything, because I believe that Jesus wants his gospel to take over everything. I do, however, think that tribulation will continue. And I do, however, believe that the enemy will always be innovating to figure out how to deceive and distract and deny and disparage not only God and the gospel, but also people doing good things for him and other people. It's always going to be the case. This is where I try to get back to the basics. I try not to be too fancy. I don't want to be a fancy guy. I want to be a basic guy, and I think that there's strength in there. One last thing, let's go. This morning, Tulsa, Oklahoma, is still without power. It's probably got power on right now, but Saturday evening, there was like a 70-mile long gust of wind that was 100-mile-an-hour plus. Knocked down all sorts of trees, destroyed the power, all sorts of things. By God's grace, we got back here. I have a generator, and so I never lost power because I got live local, amen? But at the same time, there's still an opportunity for people to drive around this morning in complete darkness. I want to use this as a metaphor. Commentary after. Now, Tulsa is an area, it's a metro area of about 500,000 people. So that video was driving around in the dark, and there was a couple lights on, but that was a very busy intersection that he drove through. This, in my view, shows that what is expected and normal can immediately be not normal. If you believe that you have certain things in your life, and all of a sudden you don't have those things, the deprivation of the things that you are used to is going to be catastrophic, could be catastrophic. Change is a big deal. I lost my father February 1. By God's grace, I had a long off-ramp to see Dad die over time. So we knew it was going to happen. There are some people that don't get that blessing. There's some people that don't get that gift. There's a lot of people that go through change that's immediate, that's unexpected. They don't see it coming. They don't know how to respond whenever that happens. In any case, whether you've got a long off-ramp as you're losing your parents, or if you've got an abrupt loss in the family, death of a friend, wife, or whoever, or if you lose your job or your business is destroyed, whatever the change is, and in whatever manner the change comes, the change is contrast. It's conflict. It's controversy. It's not what you expected. It's not what you're used to. I have learned, by God's grace, the wisdom that God uses those types of situations. He certainly knows that they're coming. I believe that whenever those bad things happen, those are an opportunity to learn more about Him. Because only God is the only consistent thing. He's the only consistent one, I should say, not thing. God's not a thing. God is the only one who is consistent with anything. And so regardless of all the changes going on, if you look to Jesus, that consistency, that solidity, that good thing, that salvation is always going to be there. Always. The gospel of Jesus Christ is how you receive everlasting life. It's how you get forgiveness of your sin. It is going to be constant and unchanging until God's patience runs out. I'm not a doomsayer. I do believe that the world will end. I do believe that eternity will come. And I do believe that everyone alive for the history of the world will live forever. You either live in hell forever or you live in heaven forever. And the only distinguishing fact is, are you in Jesus or not? Does Jesus know who you are? The way that Jesus knows who you are is that you believe His gospel. You believe that He was born of a virgin. He lived a perfect and sinless life. That He didn't abolish the law, He fulfilled the law, and He brought us a new covenant. And that covenant was based on the fact that He took the cross for our sin. His shed blood was evidence that God was washing away every single thing that you have done wrong against Him and other people. Doesn't mean that there's not consequences for doing sin. It just means that God won't remember it whenever He thinks about you in eternity. Jesus was buried under the grave, or in the grave, behind a rock, fit for a rich guy, and then 3 days later physically rose from the grave. If you believe the gospel, you are born again. If you do not believe the gospel, you will not be born again. You will not go to heaven. You will not know Jesus. And on that day, when you stand before your Creator, you will cry out, maybe, because you will be scared. You will be incredibly fearful, and you will say, well, but I did good things. I gave good money. I didn't, kill people. I didn't rape people. I didn't do this or that. Or maybe you did bad things and then you stopped them. Well, I went to AA, so I don't drink anymore. I'm not a bad guy anymore. Christ's standard is simple. I don't know you. I don't know you. Scooch. That's it. Eternity. No do-overs. That scares me, but it also gives me joy. It also gives me joy for those of us that are in Christ. We recognize that the stuff we're going through right now is nothing compared to what He's going to give us in the future. This is powerful. Believe the gospel, my friends. Folks, if this was entertaining, if it was informative, if it was illustrative, if you were able to say, you know what, I hadn't considered that perspective, that's smart. If you are also in the position where you say, you know what, I really want to bless Jaron, I want to say thank you, I want to allow him to continue to do this, to feed his family, to do the things that he's doing, please go to patriotswitch.com/Jaron, patriotswitch.com/Jaron. It is a 100% American-made company. American manufacturing takes your shopping from the big box stores and switches it over. Now, I will explain this. This is in the private, which means you have to be invited. What I'm doing is I'm inviting you. When you go to patriot.com/Jaron, you will enter your information. The reason you need to do that is because the way that the law is situated, that this entity is inviting people in. It's a completely different experience. This is becoming part of a club. It's becoming part of a membership. It's becoming part of something that the normal way of doing business is not doing. There's protections there. There's advantages there, which is why it does it. It's not the big box stores. It's not the big, we're going to walk in and buy whatever thing we want. It's you're joining a community. You're joining a situation, a group of patriots, many Christians that are affiliated with me in this regard, where we are taking the money that we currently use for Walmart, for whoever else, and we're just switching it over. patriotswitch.com/Jaron, patriotswitch.com/Jaron. Either myself or somebody else will get in touch with you. All we're going to be doing is explaining, here's what's going on. Because it's a completely different experience. It's a completely different way of doing product ordering. There's going to be an explanation. So that's what it is. It's bringing people into a different way, a new way, I would argue a more resilient pro-American way of doing business and buying household products. Anyway, I appreciate your time. God bless you. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, I am Jaron Jackson. I do love America. Do not quit. Be not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Go to war.